Chapter 8, The Novelist and the Lake House is going down straight on in. Okay, I'm ready to see what's going on. Okay, Chapter 8. Later that afternoon, Brady sat at the table with Emily in her dining room. She had prepared an Italian meal for them both, something she had wanted to do for him for a while now. They both sat at the table eating and drinking wine she had brought that day for them, and while eating and discussing more themselves, Brady could not help but think of some of the things Stan had said to him. Stop thinking about stuff Stan said. You self-sabotaging the relationship. He ignored the warning, knowing it was in his head because he wasn't real. He's a character he created for his famous novel series. But why was this so glued into his mind? Could it be that for the third time being in her 2-bedroom home, each time he has noticed the other bedroom door is permanently closed, and maybe it is locked, leaving him to believe that Stan could be right about keeping her secretive paintings in there. They ate, drank wine, and talked while the idea of checking into that room was creeping into his mind. However, is he willing to risk everything over something a made-up character said to him? I mean, all he has to do is just ask for a tour, right? Just like, hey, what's in there? You must never go there, Simba. All right, let's see. Something from someone who does not exist. He knew that if he were not careful, this would eat at him and could cause severe problems with what he had going on with Emily. So he knew he needed to get this out of his mind. Later that night, Brady and Emily were in her room having. Brady had her while his hands It was dark in the room. A light came from a nightlight in the hallway outside her open bedroom doorway. With each he'd give, he'd look down to see his something that was turning him on with such a passion, much like seeing himself while near a mirror where he could see himself. He knew it wouldn't be too much longer before Stan, oh, come on, Stan. Listen, now is not the time, Stan. Please. Can you give it a few more minutes? Because now is not the time. Like first, it was cool, you give him warnings, boom, boom, boom. But at this point, now is not the time to be barging in with the warnings. Like save that. Save it, Stan. Hirsch. Not hush. Hirsch. H-U-R-S-H. Hirsch. Let's see. Okay, let's see, where was I? And okay, so Stan casually walked into the bedroom and sat down at the edge of the bed, watching while Brady was. I feel like he might need to get a psych check because, come on. That's not normal for Brady to be having this many, illusions. Let's see. Stan was grinning while checking out Emily. He could see it on her face with that smile she was giving. He could see it in the motion of her body and how much she enjoyed. How often has she, Brady ignores keeping his focus on what he is doing, trying not to pay attention to the persona he created. Very well. Just so you know, while you have been in there, I have tried to get into that room and I had no luck. Can this wait, sir? Please. It's locked. The key must be in here somewhere because I've checked everywhere else in her house. Brady ignored him further, so Stan just nodded his head with an expression of knowing that Brady did not care about that room at that very moment. Thank you. Gotcha. Pleasure before business in this situation, Stan said while removing his, oh, not Stan, take wait a minute. Oh, you're having fun. I might as well too. I might as well too, you know, Stan said, crawling across the bed, grabbing Emily by the hair. Ooh. But did he really grab her by the hair though? Because he's invisible. Brady could hear her almost, what? Okay, you're imagining this. You're imagining this. The situation was becoming weird for Brady. He had never experienced himself alongside his alter ego double. Moments later, after Brady. Okay, so it must not have made Brady that uncomfortable because obviously the goal was still accomplished. He can hear. Oop. Moments later, after Brady does his thing, he can hear her taking in her at the same instance, causing this moment to be incredibly awkward. He thought before falling over onto the bed and laying next to Emily. They both lay utterly next to each other in the bed, on the bed, holding each other, both covered in sweat and both were panting, especially Brady. While he lay there next to her, catching his breath and collecting his thoughts, he noticed that Stan was no longer in the room, leaving him to wonder if she was leaving him confused and a bit worried about how wild his imagination had become. Placing her hands across his sweaty chest, telling him how she enjoyed him, and while she was discussing that, his mind was set on checking on that room in the middle of the night while she slept. A few hours went by into the early morning. It was still very dark outside, and Brady lay there for most of the night, waiting for Emily to fall asleep before quietly getting out of bed and tiptoeing his way across the room. He had nothing on. He was still nugget on his way out the room to check on the other bedroom, to see if Stan was right at all about her keeping secretive artwork inside. Reaching the doorway, about to walk out, Brady catches a quick startle. Stan appears in the doorway from around the corner, coming face to face with Brady, nearly frightening him. Do you mind? Brady scolded in a whisper. He was in a foul mood at that moment. He did not like to be scared, and he hated it when Stan appeared like that around him. Where the hell are you going? Stan whispers back, blocking the doorway. I'm going to check the room. Now move, Brady responded. Not without a key, you won't, Stan replied. Brady turns and looks back at Emily, fast asleep in her bed. He quietly walks over to her nightstand until he finds a gold key under a few items she has sprawled out. Quietly, not to make a sound, he moves a few items, reaches for the key, and heads back towards the doorway and down the hall, making his way to the other bedroom. When he reached the door, he went to open it, but it would not open. It was locked, just as Stan said it was. Still not believing me, as usual, huh? A whisper came from Stan, walking up to Brady from behind before leaning against the wall next to the bedroom door and watching Brady with the key reaches for the door for the keyhole. Brady ignores him and unlocks the door. He opens the door and walks inside this dark room. He closed the door behind him quietly so that it would not wake her up. He had also closed it so he could turn on the light for a moment and see what was inside this locked room. I can't believe you had me doing this, Brady whispered to Stan. Yeah, because I got a gun to your head, forcing you to do it. Stan responded with sarcasm. Inside the room, they saw white sheets and plastic covering everything. The room was plain, with no pictures or any items hanging on the walls, and there was no furniture, no bed, and nothing but items across the floor, covered by sheets and plastic. Carefully and quietly, Brady uncovered the plastic and sheets from surrounding items in the room. There were canvases with more paintings to be found. Some weren't finished and some were dark paintings. Nothing like what Brady had seen in her art gallery. These paintings were of death and dark things. For example, one of the paintings was a beautiful lady wearing a black cloak with a hood, but her long blonde hair hung down the bottom of her chest. She stood in the woods where bodies were hanging from tree branches on each side of her, and the woman wearing the cloak held a lantern in her hand. It was the witch from her dream. It looked like an old setting from the early 1900s, Brady thought, before discovering another disturbing like painting. A wolf devouring a person was bloody and grotesque for a painting, and behind the wolf devouring the body by the neck, there were dead children with torn limbs that could be seen painted in the background. She sure is a bit crazy and well gifted with paintings of the dark arts, Stan mumbled while walking around the room, checking out the multiple paintings that Brady was uncovering one after the other. After uncovering one of the paintings, Brady stops and stares at it with a confused yet surprised expression. The painting was of a woman with curly dark brown hair laying naked on her side with her right hand tucked under the side of her head in a position as though she was posing nude for someone or waiting. While he stared at this picture with such confusion drawn all over his face, he saw not only this woman recognizable, but also in the room and bed she was laying on looked very familiar. The room was spacious and very nice. The bed was king size, and the windows surrounding the bed stood out very well to him. He knew this room and the woman he saw in this painting. Stan walks up beside Brady, staring at the painting. Wow, that room looks just like the primary bedroom at your lake house. But I don't know what I'm talking about though. Okay, I'm being paranoid. Okay. Ooh, goodness. And that woman looks identical to Cheryl, he said. Brady could not take his eyes off the painting. It had a striking resemblance to his ex-girlfriend Cheryl, who he was dating at the time when writing the second book, The Novelist and the Lake House. And the room she was in was identical to this bedroom there at his lake house in East Tennessee. This is impossible, Brady implied, looking over at Stan, who just gave him that I told you so kind of look. Stan walks over to another covered up painting. He uncovers it, revealing yet another somewhat disturbing image. This time, the painting was of Emily. She was completely naked with all the fine details of her body. She wore a hood with a robe that hung down beside her so her whole front body was exposed, and her red hair was curly and hanging down to her breast and nipples. Her face had blood seeping from her mouth, and a dead body covered in blood with teeth marks was painted at the bottom just in front of her feet. And on each side of her were naked men on their knees, kneeling as though she were of great importance to them or worshipped by them. Brady stood next to Stan and stared at the picture. trying to depict the meaning of this painting. Maybe she is exposing that these men are worshiping her as a goddess. She's a witch. Stan looks at Brady with a grin. Do you understand that we not sandwiched? When you grow up, Brady responded. Yeah, says the guy who created me in his delusional brain. Are these paintings any different from the skeletons in your closet? Stan asked. I'm warning you to shut the hell up, Brady growled. Wait, skeletons in the closet? Wait a minute. Before he and Stan are both fairly startled by Emily's voice calling out from behind them, demanding to know what they are doing in this room, Brady turns and looks at Emily, pointing to a black Glock 19. Wait a minute. Wait, why'd you go? Oh, maybe she thinks that they're being robbed. Okay. Pointing at a black Glock 19, and that's the same gun that the girl had in his other book. Is he imagining all of this stuff again? Emily, what are you doing with that gun? He asked, slowly raising his hands over his head. His heart was racing at the fact that his girlfriend, butt naked, stood across the room, surrounded by bizarre paintings, pointing a gun right at him. Why are you snooping around in here? She asked. Brady looked to his right, seeing that Stan was no longer in his sight, and he knew it would make no sense to tell her the real reason he went into this room, but he knew he had to tell her something. She had this look in her eyes that he had never seen before. They were eyes of pure madness. I saw that this door was locked, so I was curious, and when I came in here and saw the first painting I uncovered, I became curious as to what other paintings you had. She knew he was lying. He was holding something back. There was no reason for him to check this room if he hadn't been told about it or had previously been spying on her, or maybe there was something he was not telling her. No, I don't trust you. I can't trust you. How do I know you weren't sent here? Huh? Now, why would he be sent there? Maybe he really does just want to look at the pictures. Baby, listen. I did not mean to pry like this. I was curious as to why this door was locked. He explained, fearing for his life. Emily shakes her head in disbelief. It is written all over her face. No, I can't trust you anymore. I'm sorry, but you must leave, she replied. Just before firing a shot from the gun. What? Is it that serious that she's up here firing shots of the gun? It's just paint. Unless some of the paintings he didn't get to were crime scenes. Let me see. The bullet went right into Brady's chest. Wait, okay, he is imagining this. There's no way she shot him for real. Sending him to the floor. His hand was over the wound, gushing blood. He watched Emily walking over and standing over him, pointing the gun directly at his face. He knew he could do nothing at this point. It was like something he had written in one of his books. She pulls the trigger, the blast from the gun is heard, and everything goes dark. Brady quickly jumps out of a deep sleep. You know what? This man and his imagination is running too wild, because I was like, there's no way. She pulled a gun on him. And at first I'm like, okay, maybe she thought somebody was breaking in. There's no way she's gonna shoot him dead over him seeing paintings. Like, I knew it. Brady quickly jumps out of a deep sleep, covered in sweat, and finds himself in Emily's bedroom. It was morning. The sun was shining through the curtain hanging in the bedroom window, and she was not there in bed beside him, making him nervous as to where she was before he was startled by Stan, seemingly out of nowhere, appearing at the bedside next to Brady. He placed his hand over his chest and took a deep breath. For the love of God, please stop appearing at me like that. Thought you should know that sexy girlfriend of yours is in the kitchen cooking breakfast, Stan said. Brady sits up in bed, about to come out of it before he stops and looks at Stan. Were you in that dream? He asked. Well, duh. Where the hell else will I be? I'm in your head, stupid. I go everywhere you go. Wherever you, and blah, blah, blah. Stan answered, glad to know it was a dream, Brady replied while collecting himself and his thoughts, feeling relieved that it was a dream until Stan said something that struck a nerve. Sure, let's call it a dream, Stan said, walking towards the doorway of the bedroom before he stopped and looked back at Brady, who quickly asked why he said that. He walks over to Brady, who seems confused and unnerved. He leans down into Brady's face, looking closer at him. Don't you find it quite odd, dream or no dream, that she just so happened to have the same gun as the wife that got cheated on by her husband in your last novel? Several times before Brady lost himself and shouted, will you shut the hell up? Okay, so Brady really is loony. Okay, so what if Brady is really Stan in real life and he killed all his 3 girlfriends? Cheryl, Tanya, and whoever the other one was. Hence the skeletons in his closet. And that's why his books sold so well, because they were true. And that's why Stan looks like him. Cusco. Cusco's poison. The poison to kill Cusco. Oh yeah. It's all coming together. My brain is braining. Let's see. And I could be completely wrong, but it's still fun to guess. So, all right. Emily stopped what she was doing and turned around with a bewildered expression. She saw Brady at the table, trying to act naturally as if she hadn't heard him. What was that all about? She asked, cutting a smile while asking. Brady sits there fighting with an idea of something to say instead of the truth that he speaks to a character that is him in the sense that he created and is now alive in his mind. Sorry. Sometimes when I'm running ideas about my books, I almost reenact them just to get the right feel. Stan, back to sitting down in his chair, starts clapping his hands in an ovation towards Brady while repeating, bravo, about 5 or 6 times before Brady cuts him a dirty look. Bravo, bravo. All while Emily could not hear, let alone see Stan sitting at the table. She cuts Brady a smile. Well, dear, breakfast is ready, she said, bringing him a plate and sitting it on the table in front of him with a cup of coffee. She even brought him a glass of orange juice. Brady licked his lips, and the smell of the food was incredible, he thought. Stan licked his lips and slapped his stomach in excitement, but had a pissed off look come over his face after she sat down with her plate of food. Brady had a plate and she had a plate, but he sat there with nothing in front of him. He leans over towards Brady. What the hell is this? That bitch didn't make me anything. Brady grins while eating and looking across the table at Emily. When her eyes look away, he casually leans in towards Stan. Why do you care? She's a witch, remember? He whispers in a way so that Emily would not hear be, she's got to hear him. There's no way that he's whispering out loud. It's only them. You know, I be thinking like maybe she has on like music or TV. Even with that, if it's just y'all, she's gonna hear. She probably thinks that you're crazy, but she loves you anyway. Let's see. Stan was not too thrilled. While standing up from the table, he walked over towards Emily, sticking his middle finger from his right hand and pointing it in her unknowing face. Fuck you, bitch. I'll get better next time. He snarled before storming out of the room. Brady sat there wanting to laugh, but had to fight the urge not to look crazier in front of Emily, who of course had no idea what the hell just happened. Oof. This man is off his rocker. But again, I feel like Stan has always been there, but I'm calling it. I'm calling it now. Brady, really is Stan. Brady has killed his other 3 girlfriends that he used to write the book. And what if Stan's character is basically meant to turn him against the other women so that he can kill them? Because Stan is trying to find every reason he can to turn him against her. He has no solid proof, nothing like that. You know, she was on the phone, maybe, you know, and then stuff about keeping her dark arts. So what if she paints dark arts? As long as it's not like murder scenes that she's done. Which might be the case. But at first I was thinking that this might be, excuse me, some kind of like self-sabotage, the way that you do when like you're in a relationship and it's going good and it's healthy and everything is wonderful, but it's going too good and you're used to craziness and drama and foolishness and red flags. And so you kind of, as a form of like protection, you kind of get away from the relationship. So he might be doing that, but I still think he's crazy because he's actively, I'm thinking that Brady is like talking to him in his mind, but apparently he's talking to him in real life and whispering. So, woo, okay. So that was chapter 8. Next is gonna be chapter 9. So stay tuned. Tell me so tell me in the comments, question number 1. Do you think that Emily heard him at any point whispering to himself or talking to himself? Because remember, at her art studio, she heard him talking. Remember? Because she was like, I called you several times and no answer, but I heard you talking. Who are you talking to? So he's hearing her. And what if she's hearing him say all these things about her? We'll just stick with that question for now, because I'm curious to see what y'all think. So go ahead and get some water, go use the restroom, all the things, and we will reconvene for chapter 9. Okay. See y'all next time. Peace.